Hi, I'm Mark Tyrell, and this is Talking Textiles, where we talk to successful companies about their experiences in the fabric industry. This podcast is brought to you by the Canada Division of Advanced Textile Association, a not-for-profit trade association representing the international specialty fabrics marketplace. ATA hosts several exciting events throughout the year, including the annual Expo happening October 12th through 14th of 2022 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Expo 2022 is the textile and specialty fabrics industry's flagship show for sourcing, networking, and education. To learn more about Expo and other upcoming events, visit textiles.org/events. On today's episode, we'll be speaking with Craig Fawcett, president of Lethbridge Canvas, manufacturers of awnings, tents, and covers, as well as Jonathan Fawcett, his son and the heir apparent to the company. We'll learn about Craig's path into the textile industry, his achievements in business, and his years in the industry. And now, let's talk textiles. Welcome, everyone, to Talking Textiles. This podcast is brought to you by the Canada Division of the Advanced Textile Association, formerly known as IFAI. I'm Mark Tyrell, and I'm joined by co-host Alex Petezian. Welcome, Alex.
Awesome to be here with you guys again today.
For everybody listening, this is really the inaugural podcast of the ATA, as we're now known, as opposed to IFAI. So a first of sorts. Thanks to everybody who is listening in. Today, we're interviewing Craig Fawcett of Lethbridge Canvas out of Lethbridge, Alberta, a manufacturer of shade products and covers, and that has been in business for over 30 years. And along with Craig is his son, Jonathan, who we understand is the heir apparent. So welcome, Craig and Jonathan, to the podcast.
Thanks. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Everybody, I think, loves a good origin story. Likes to know, how we got to this point and understand the background and how you came to be, Lethbridge Canvas. So the first question really is to you, Craig, to kind of give us a bit of a backstory. Go as far back as you want, as to what's relevant and where you were before you got into Lethbridge and how that all came about.
Well, what brought us to Lethbridge was 1989. My dad, Barry Fawcett, bought out an existing business called Ducan Canvas, or Pass-Through Custom Canvas, that was existing here in Lethbridge. My dad was the sales manager at Calgary Tent and Awning for 17 years up till that point. And he was at a point where he needed to do something for his retirement. So he knew of this family here that had a small canvas shop that they were spread too thin. They had 3 different businesses and they were trying to run all 3 at once. So he knew they were wanting to offload one. So he approached them and gave them an offer. They accepted. And then he asked if wanted somebody from the family to join him for succession, right? And at the time, my wife and I were just back from 2 years in Puerto Rico working at a deaf school. I'm an interpreter for the deaf by training, and we were working at this deaf school for 2 years. And I was starting to have carpal tunnel issues with my wrists from interpreting all day long. So that was a good opportunity, I thought. He needed somebody to learn the books, which was not my background. So I got the computer program and started studying it and learning the old DOS Simply Accounting program and jumped in and got trained by the lady who was running things down here. And in 1989, we moved here on April 1st was our first day. So April Fool's Day was quite appropriate. And so 33 years later, here we are, hoping to take over from us.
Nice. That honestly, your dad's side of it is, I guess, probably pretty standard stuff, buying a business or whatever.
Pretty well, yeah.
Your entrance in the business, that is one of the most interesting backstories we've heard, I think, on this podcast. You're coming from that is a very different background, and I would never have known that carpal tunnel syndrome was an occupational hazard for teaching.
Yeah, it is actually.
All the hand movements.
Quite a few people. Yeah.
Wow.
Not only that, you went from the sun to the snow.
Yeah, that was a really stupid thing. I kick myself almost every day in winter wondering why I'd ever move from Puerto Rico back to Canada.
Should have opened up the canvas shop in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, exactly.
Your own business more so there.
Would have made more sense, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, on the sun protection side, definitely.
Yes, yeah.
On that topic, before we leave it off, whatever. So like now I never knew how much I probably needed to be aware of, what I was saying from a distance. And if you were, somewhere over there sort of thing, like I'm guessing you can You can read lips without a problem, I'm guessing.
Well, no, if you're an interpreter, it doesn't mean you can read lips. It's just you can sign. Lip reading is very imprecise science. So many mouth shapes are the same words, right? Same words have the same shape.
So you're still safe, Mark.
You're still safe.
Yeah. Either that or he's keeping his secret weapon undercover. So he's like, hey, don't out me. It works great in negotiations. So that's interesting. I didn't know that your dad had worked with Calgary Tent and Awning, who's been a member of.
I started there as a 16-year-old lacing awnings, working with Bill Fithian and Les Thorne, and they were the owners at the time. And all the people that own it now were just little grunts under me, actually, at the time, back in the 70s, 80s, when I worked there as a high school kid. So it's a good way to learn the industry, has come up through it,
Okay, yeah. So you did have exposure to the industry and to the business. So
oh yeah, totally. I started there washing tents for the rental tents they had and lacing awnings. Yeah, pretty well.
Just out of curiosity, did you enjoy it? Did you like it at the time when you were with?
That's how I learned sign language, because they had a deaf employee. So really? I worked with this fellow named David every day, and I said, that's my opportunity to learn to sign. So it was a great time. I loved it there. Yeah, we had a great time.
Oh, wow. Talk about full circle.
Yeah. Keep right around.
Same thing. That's
some crazy coincidences going on.
Story.
Yeah.
Incredible. So when did you take over the business, Craig, from your father?
Well, we started here in 89, and he expanded quite a bit from what it was at the time. It's quite a small little shop that just did a very narrow range of products. And he added teepees and all kinds of different things. So he retired in 2003, and we took over at that time. So yeah, it's been, 18 years now on our own, or something like that.
And how was the transition at the time? Was it a difficult transition? Did you guys have similar goals or ideas, or was that?
Well, like most things, I never went to school for business or anything. So everything I know is just because it's what my dad did, right? So I'm just like a mini me of him in some ways. But the way we ran the business was I just carried on with what he did. And so now with Jonathan taking over, he's going to drag us kicking and screaming into the 21st century. Technology.
Jonathan, I feel for you. I've been there.
He not coming out, it's a little easier to drag him.
Yeah, pretty well.
That is a good point. Just out of curiosity, actually, Jonathan, did you work with your grandfather at all? Were you in the business at that point, or did you come in after that?
Not much. I did do some cleaning of the tents like Craig did when he was coming up with the business. But I was probably not much older than 13 at the time when that was happening. So
yeah,
very limited experience with working under my grandfather, mostly with my father.
Right.
Yeah, he's been here for the last, 6-7 years now? Yeah. Pretty well full time. He did go to the college to do a business program to learn the business side, so he knows hopefully more than I do, I believe.
Yeah. I have to say, in a family business myself, the experience that I got outside of, the business wherever, has really helped me to bring it along, because otherwise, you step in, you kind of do things, as they've always been done. And, you got to be able to look at it. You got to be able to look at it critically, because you've seen others.
Yeah.
In saying that, have you guys had outside help from anybody like Jonathan, besides school? Do you have any networking events that can help you, or networking events in Lethbridge that can help you grow as a business?
Or consultants?
Well, other than just being part of the member of the Chamber of Commerce, and they have networking things, and I took advantage of quite a few of those when I first took over. And a lot of my best contacts were through IFAI. And the years I was on the board for the Canada division, those connections and those people to bounce ideas off were invaluable at the time. So you could always get some kind of feedback from somebody if you had some question.
And you felt like people were open that way, and that
Oh yeah.
Alex, thanks for the plug. Now we need you to call it ATA from here on.
Yeah.
Right? That's not going to come easy.
Yeah.
we're also used to saying it. Like, I think it was brought down to ATA to kind of simplify it, because IFAI seemed like a mouthful, but those of us that have been in it for 10 plus, and in your case 30 plus years, like, it's not going to go away easy, huh? So on the succession front, actually, a question for you, Craig, because I do remember you have 7 or 8 children. Is that
7? Yeah,
7, right? So
4 boys, 3 girls. Yeah.
So are there any other any of your other children involved in the business?
Well, they've all kind of been involved growing up. As they got to a certain age, they would help out on the tent crews, because we have a tent rental division that does wedding and party tent rentals. And so that was a good opportunity for them to have work in the summer, and something that's physical, and get out and do stuff. But as far as Jonathan's involvement, he's to the level that none of them have been before. None of them really showed the aptitude for it. He's got a very much the same kind of personality as my dad did. Nothing ruffles him. He can take pretty well anything, and which is good, because some days it's so crazy. But yeah, he's pretty evenly keeled.
So is there any other like family members that have remained like working in the business, sort of thing?
My wife does the books at the background. She's not in the office. She remotes in from her home office. And my daughter-in-law, my oldest son's wife, is helping us out part-time on the front end in reception and dealing with customers, answering phones. So they've all done that. My other daughters have also done in the background, helped out on the office side of things. So
right. So it was Jonathan was an obvious choice. It was an easy like you didn't have to wrestle with that at all, as far as the rest of the family or that.
No, not really.
I was instantly curious about that when you told me you had that your son Jonathan was the next in line sort of to take over, and I was like, wow, I wonder how that came about and how that evolved.
Yeah,
knowing how big your family is.
He's the only one who didn't say no. That's all.
So he's right. Isn't it right now realizing he just came up on it was his age was next sort of thing?
Yeah, basically. He's got the most aptitude for it. He's very creative, and he can think in 3D, which is totally necessary in this line of work, to try and design things and know what your products can do or they can't do. So, it takes a fair amount of creativity for this kind of work.
That's interesting. So Jonathan, as in your education background, you've got like the business side of it, but you also have an aptitude for the actual creative side and working with the fabrics and the material and the structures.
Yes. Yeah, I've always been good with my hands, so very handy kind of individual. Anything that needed to be created, I usually don't have much issue working on it. And same goes for the fabric industry. I do most, if not all, the maintenance or work on all the sewing machines if there's any work that needs to be done on it. So I got firsthand experience from a sewing machine mechanic here prior to him leaving. Just learn the ropes, figure out what does what. And if you know how a machine works, you can fine tune it to work on different materials, and different materials feed differently through different machines. So once you get the feel for that, you can get a lot better looking products out there, get a lot better looking, a lot happier customers as well. So
I didn't really have any formal training on the sewing machine side of things.
No.
Just sat down and figured it out, which is way over my head, I'll tell you.
A lot of it.
Mine too.
Yeah, I don't think many young people can do that.
Western Canada, that's a big issue, because there are no sewing machine techs, and we don't have a huge population out here like Toronto or Montreal, where you got a lot of shops that could support a single tech. We had one guy who was an old Romanian machinist, and he could make anything run, but then he ended up getting cancer and dying about 5 years ago. And so everyone's been kind of like
in the bind of
trying to find someone right now. They don't have anyone in-house to do it. So we're kind of blessed that way, that he can pretty well figure out anything. He just sits down and looks at it long enough.
Right.
Yeah.
That's bad. It's funny. Even here, we have a production side to our business, and the person that really is done. I mean, we're fortunate. We do have a machine tech in that can come in and do the fixing. But we did have somebody internally, and he's still here. The man's in his 80s though.
Yeah.
It's very hard to find. You know what I mean?
It is. Yeah.
That's one of the challenges I feel is getting young people to work in fabric shops as well.
Totally.
And everybody's into IT and tech, and I guess it's the workforce is changing. But the one thing I wanted to ask Jonathan was, what have you learned from your dad, Jonathan? Like one thing that's really stuck out for you, from your dad over the years of working with him.
Well, for the most part, although I'm fairly, good with the mechanical side of things by nature, just from what I'm naturally good at, Dad has definitely gotten the better eye for things. So knowing what colors go with what, especially for picking colors of awnings and stuff for houses and the like, which customers often ask our professional input on what would be the better selection, let's say. Should you go with a dark color, light color contrast, or something that complements? Which I had no idea. That was definitely not something I was good at back in the day. I'd pick a color and it'd be fine for me, but apparently people have their own opinions. So that being more artistic is definitely, I've been gleaning off of conversations he's had with customers and other areas to kind of get a general view of what is acceptable or what people would like based off of different criteria that they have.
Yeah. And year to year it changes, and you learn more. So I mean, it's that's certainly something that would be difficult for me too. What color awning goes with my house? White? I don't know.
Usually just ask the wife and hopefully everything works out.
Yeah. The woman.
You said it, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think more often than not it is. It's the women that pick the colors, and the guys who just you might ixnay something, but that's about as far as you go. Your veto power is about it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So that's a really good complementary arrangement there, sort of thing. So how you feeling, Jonathan, about Craig? Are you planning to retire anytime soon, or?
Well, we just actually had a supper meeting a few days ago talking about what's the next steps here. What's our timeline look like? So we've talked to our accountant. We have to have a meeting with them still, and just get his feedback on where the company is at right now and what steps he sees that we should be taking right now to lay the groundwork for that. But in the next few years, when I took over from my dad, he stepped out gradually over the course of a few years. He just came in less and less, came in for half days, for 3 days a week or whatever, and just gradually just handed control over. And Jonathan right now is basically running everything as it is. I've kind of put my hands up and said, you do it. You make the decisions and hire who you think you need and whatever, because you're going to be taking it over. So it's.
I was going to say, is your role more of a consultant at this point, sort of thing? Somebody you can fall back on?
Yeah, basically, I kind of see that in my mind's eye. Right. Yeah.
No, that's ideal. And you know what? That's the type of stuff
mostly that no one else does. So as far as like the patio awnings and retractable screen systems, all that knowledge is up here. So I would probably still be working in the summer as a salesman, just on commission down the road, and that way it doesn't have to fall on someone else's shoulder to learn everything that I've learned yet. Someone can come alongside and eventually learn it, but I don't imagine us not being around here in the summers, so it makes sense to have something to do in the summer, spring and summer.
Yeah, fair enough. But I guess at some point you're going to have to take somebody out on the road with you and kind of show them, maybe somebody that has a bit of an eye for things the way you do, and look for on the rest of it.
Someday.
Yeah, because here's the thing in our industry, and I'm sure you guys, you know it too, is that there's just a lot of family businesses, right? And a lot of
most of them are family businesses.
Yeah, a lot of people dealing with the same thing. So it's one of the things why we really kind of like to touch on succession and see what everybody's plans are, and and how they're passing it along. And I wonder, you mentioned you've got a lot of in your head sort of thing about the business. Have you guys ever worked with a consultant? Have you ever felt any kind of, or had anybody kind of push you to put things on paper, like SOPs, that sort of thing, like and how to's, manuals, that sort of thing?
Not really. Certain areas of our work, we have done that. Like for the TP side of things, we have things all written out and drawn up, how to sew or pattern the TP, those kind of things. It's not something you just going to pick up, or it's something you really have to put down on paper. So, but as far as anything else, no. it might be a little bit short-sighted on our side, but
it's tough though. I mean, I get it. You guys are in a pretty made to measure kind of business, right? Like it's a lot of custom work. Right?
yeah,
It's in your name.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the only thing we do is what isn't in the store. So yeah,
right.
And I wanted to transition about or go off of what Mark was getting to. How did the pandemic affect your business?
we didn't quite know what it was going to look like back, when it first hit. We shut everything down just like everyone did, kind of sitting on our hands, waiting to see, where is this going to go? Are they going to open things up in 2 weeks? Well, we know that didn't happen, but we started getting feedback from different places and just through the grapevine about masks. So I bought a whole bunch of just lightweight cotton pattern prints, and we started sewing masks. I got a pattern from a medical group down in the States that dealt with the nurses in some of these bigger hospitals, and the pattern that they were using for sewn fabric masks. We started just sewing thousands and thousands of masks and selling them for $10 each, and that carried us through the first few months of uncertainty. And it was all done mostly through Facebook, putting it on Facebook and people contacting us in order 10, 15, 20, sometimes 80, 100 for their whole staff or whatever. And, we did that for a few months. And then because they basically said, yeah, you are an essential service, because farmers and truckers always need to have tarps. So, we didn't shut that side of things down. We kept going there and just eventually got back to doing what we always did and stopped sewing masks over time. But for 3-4 months, that's what got us through. And then since then, we found that out here in the West, no one was traveling. Everyone was stuck at home. So, they were all working on their houses and their yards. So we had the best awning seasons and screen seasons we've had in years as far as sales go. Right. Typically, historically, we wouldn't sell an awning past August, a patio awning, because everyone would think, well, I'll do it next year because I'm not going to be able to use it this year. But this last couple of years, I've sold an awning or a screen and installed them every month of the year. So right. It was like we were doing every month, still doing patio awnings and screens, even in winter, which has never happened historically ever. So, but people had money and they weren't spending it. So they were planning ahead for the spring, for the summer.
Yeah. Did you find people were also willing to wait longer, like, leave the order on from last season, I'll get it next season?
They have, just because of supply line issues this year. Yeah. A lot of our suppliers are saying, well, because of parts that we can't get from Europe or whatever, things are going to take 12 weeks. Well, that's the entire summer gone, but still a lot of people planned ahead, did their homework in the fall and ordered early in the spring. So they've got their awnings already, but I just sold one this morning for someone who's going to get it in August now. So yeah, people are willing to wait,
I think people have been understanding more than usual.
Yeah, because they see it everywhere. It's across the board in just about every industry. Yeah. Right. So
maybe the pandemic has been a good lesson in patience in our immediate gratification society. We've all had to take a step back, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's well put, Mark. I agree with that. I think people are just, a lot more understanding, a lot more willing to work with you, depending on, even if you have a longer lead time, or even the prices have increased significantly, and it's not something that you want to do, but you almost have to because of all the increases. I mean, look at the price of gas, right? Like it's
I know, yeah,
incredible. I mean, never thought we would see these numbers or these.
That's actually. Thanks, Alex. That's a perfect segue into my next question, because like something specific about Alberta, because you guys go across a lot of different markets. So you talked about the residential. I'm sure you got some commercial stuff.
Yeah, we do commercial, residential, yeah,
stuff. And industrial, correct? Like
industrial, yeah.
So did you see like a real drop in the industrial when the oil industry kind of took a hit in 2020, and has that come back a lot? Like I would imagine
we're not so tied in with the oil industry down here because we're so far south. Okay, we're mostly all agricultural down here. Okay. Surrounded by farmers and big Hutterite organizations, big, like the Amish, that kind of idea. Big corporate farms. So, the bread and butter for us is tarps and swather canvases and things like that. That's for industrial kind of stuff. We deal more with like Frito-Lay and McCain's and, industrial curtains and industrial covers for their equipment, that kind of stuff. So a lot of industrial just custom work for factory covers, things like that.
So I guess other than commercial, you guys wouldn't have taken a hit anywhere.
Not a great hit. Not like some places like Calgary, Edmonton, where they're really tied in with the oil industry and doing, rig enclosures. Some of those guys really got hurt when things went south and everything shut down. So thankfully we're not that tied into it. So.
Well, that and you pivoted pretty quick to do the masks. I'm guessing, like if you were doing those for a few months and before coming back, because I know, like I'm sure it was like here that the residential market bounced back fast, right? Like it didn't take that long.
No, yeah, you're right.
So so you guys filled it in with the masks like that. That was creative and pretty quick and
it worked.
Well done. Yeah.
And you almost, I feel like, especially with I don't know how big you guys are, but you said you're in a small community. Usually smaller companies can pivot a lot faster than the bigger ones.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
You're almost, keeping pace or doing a little bit better by adding a complementary product.
Right.
And where we've seen these bigger companies they just almost can't pivot during this time, and people are working from home and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But did you guys work from home at all, or how was?
We had to be a little bit creative in that with our staff and the programs that are being offered by the government to help businesses, etc., and people. We had our staff, some of them banked hours because they were on EI. They would just work, come in and work as we needed them and bank the hours, and we pay them later in the summer when we were busy and had the cash flow to do it. So we just kept track of banked hours. That's some of what we did. And we do that through the winter months to get by to when things are slow. And thankfully the staff are very flexible and willing to do that. They don't mind having the extra time to do what they want to do outside of this place too.
Speaking of which, have you guys had any staffing challenges?
Yeah, we always have had that, but we've got a very consistent staff. We've had historically really long-term staff, people that stayed with us for 20 years, for 15, 20 years. And one of our main people up front just retired this last fall, and she hired her replacement, and then the replacement got sick as soon as she started and ended up having to quit. So that's been a hard one to fill because she was with us for 20 years and she used to sew all our teepees. Then you just don't want to let that kind of knowledge go, right?
Yeah.
You've invested so much in someone and they've got so much experience that you just keep them around as long as you can. So some people are definitely hard to replace. We've hired some new people recently that have worked out really well.
Oh, that's great.
Have fit in really well. Because every time you add someone, it changes the whole dynamic of the shop, right?
Right.
Just the whole atmosphere and the way everyone relates to each other. It's got to be a good fit.
Yeah. I think it's always a tough transition. We have a very I guess kind of an aging staff, you know what I mean, and lots of loyal people that have been here 30, 40, 50 plus years even in some cases. And
wow.
It's, and those are the people that we can still count on, sort of. They remember, but it's been tough, and I think it's it's almost specific to the timing right now too. Like it's which is a little bit why I asked the question. We've experienced it, and I've heard it a lot from our industry and other industries that it's just very difficult to find people right now. I think it's been a perfect storm. A lot of retirements, a lot of and just increase in demand. And I was actually curious, did you've had the consistent staff and that, but did you have room to grow? Because I'm guessing, in the pandemic with the increase in the residential business and your industrial business not faltering, Like, did you guys actually experience growth in the during the pandemic?
I think we experienced growth in this area of sales as far as numbers go, but not to the point where we needed to really hire an extra person to deal with the growth.
Okay.
You know, we were able to manage it with the people we had.
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. For us, staffing wise, it's usually always better to not specialize in the industry as much. So having staff that are more flexible, as in they can handle more than one job, can allow them to be busier more often and not have to rely on just the busy trends like in agriculture, where when they're planting or harvesting, they're using all their equipment and none of that needs to get in and get fixed. So you have about 2 weeks at least where you're not going to see much business there. And for those 2 weeks, if your worker is not just tied to that industry particularly, but can then set up a tent or help install an awning or, do whatever else we do as a service, will keep them busier longer and just be a more efficient use of their time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cross training is really important.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Flexible. Yeah.
That is key, and I think that's a great buzzword or keyword for our listeners. I think it's such an important thing, and if people haven't realized it in a small business, like you always got to have backup for pretty much every position, because you never know when somebody's gonna.
Especially if somebody is the only person who does what they do, and then they're not there. It leaves a big hole.
So yeah, it's that knowledge that we almost, the next generation has to put on paper or in the software, so that if there is that turnover, because I imagine moving forward there's going to be a lot more turnover, just with the workforce, the way it's changing. Having that in the software is going to be helpful. I know even in our company, same thing, a little bit older staff. People want to take time off work a little bit more. Whatever happens, there's got to be some backup to getting those roles out. That's for sure. So
right.
I think we're all experiencing that same challenge with the workforce and things like the economy changing and the culture changing, that sort of thing too. So
Yeah, actually, Alex, you bring up a good point when you say software and that, and I'm curious, and maybe a question for both Craig and Jonathan. Have you guys automated to any degree in the last little while in terms of to like kind of bring in efficiencies? And Jonathan, if maybe the second part of the question for you to answer is, do you have plans to do so and going forward?
We haven't really automated just because of what we do. It's kind of hard, and you need a lot of space for a CAD program and a cutting table and all that kind of stuff. I'd not seen the need in the last 10 years to go that route, but Johnny might go that route down the road. He's quite tech savvy. He writes programs, and he's spent a lot of time getting our stuff all digitized, getting our price list and all our inventory online, and trying to make up a program that we can use be paperless and write the program for that. And he did write up a TARP program that we can use to estimate tarps and just to speed up the tarp estimating, for brand new tarps, plugging in the size and what material, and it pops everything out, how many hours or whatever, and what the cost would be and what you would need to make it. So that's kind of his strength, is the technology side of that.
Yeah, pretty much is working on efficiencies. So a lot of things need to be done and can be automated. A lot of just inputting information over and over and over again. The more you can take that off of a person's hands, the less people you need to have working on it, and the more different work that person can then do. So, having a system where everything's all correlated together. So having a price book that has connections internally with the work order system, so that if you place a work order, it already knows what you have for inventory because it's tied into our inventory list, which is tied into a pricing list. So it'll be able to know if we have enough inventory for a set project. And when they finish it, it'll automatically be able to deduct whatever they ended up using or putting down as material used, with automatic notifications sent out to let us know if a certain item or quantities of items are running low in supply and need to be resupplied. So it's adding a lot of quick little automations to the system to have less of our eyes and ears around necessary to actually keep things rolling. And to, I guess, make it more consistent, especially with, the number of different materials we have or items we have. It's really hard to keep track of if we have 100 of this or 50 of that. Having a machine do it for you is a lot more consistent. So it's mainly in that area that we've been automating, not so much in the fabrication process itself.
Yeah, or on the front end.
Mhm.
No, but to be fair, I mean, that's a fair bit of automation, like what you're talking about. I mean, that's
Where you spend a lot of time.
right.
Just figuring out all of that stuff, right?
Because it sounds to me like it's fairly sophisticated for, like I said, a custom business where it's kind of difficult to predict a lot of those things or to kind of read trends or forecast and that. So so you've set up the system and you're actually writing the programs and writing the software.
That's what he's done. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I've been teaching myself the programming language and trying out a few different services and seeing which one would work best for it. Been working on it for probably the past 3 or so years.
Wow.
Is it like that DOS program your dad?
No floppy disks.
No floppy.
No.
I couldn't wait to get that one out.
Yeah. No.
Nothing quite like that.
Honestly, I mean that's impressive that you're what I mean, that is quite the skill set. You talked about aptitude earlier, Craig, but man, you landed on a gold mine here.
Yeah, we hit the jackpot with this.
Is there a project you guys worked on together that stands out in your mind that you'd want to tell the people listening? Probably
the most complicated engineering project I worked on in the last 1.5 to 2 years would be for Atlantic, the 80-foot reactor pool covers.
Yeah, we had to build their Rogers sugar plant in Tabor, which is about half hour from us. They have 2 big methane reactor pools on the roof of their water treatment plant, and they needed some custom covers built that they can take off and put on, during the winter or whatever. They're kind of seasonal, but they're huge. They're 80 feet long and 40 feet wide, and they have sides on them, and the sides needed to be detachable. And so Jonathan, we did a set of covers years ago that I designed that didn't last as long as I had hoped. So Jonathan redesigned them all and did a very good job, and they look like they fit like a glove now. So that was quite the big project. Took over a year to do, because we actually made them, but by the time they were done, it was past their season. They didn't need them on yet. So they sat here for half a year until they needed them put back on, and then they were finally finished. But yeah, that was quite the major project.
Wow. Where's that located?
It's in Tabor, Alberta.
Tabor.
Yeah, where all the sugar beets are converted to sugar there. It's a big sugar plant there.
That's awesome.
Really, the biggest complications with that would be for such long lengths, especially for material wise. You have to take into consideration many factors, especially where it's located. Tabor, especially how high it is, gets quite a bit of wind. So you need something that's anchored properly, and something 80 foot long in one piece is very hard to anchor properly and still have it removable so you can still look on the inside. Along with that, having something that accommodate different temperatures for shrinkage and or expansion, and especially with the vinylized product, which has an overall shrinkage over years, you can't have something so well fitted that a year or two later it's too small to actually fit over the size it needs to be, because 80 feet of vinyl will shrink quite a bit even over 1 or 2 years. It takes only about 2 inches for it to not fit anymore. So had to come up with a modular system that accommodates for the shrinkage, so it has overlapping material that would allow itself to shrink over time and still have its full cover, because you want to have everything airtight so none of the gas gets out, as well as strapped down in several locations with redundant straps for in case the wind picked it up and tried to tear off one section.
Yeah,
it's definitely been the hardest project I had to make, trying to incorporate known shrinkage of the material as well as just keeping it resistant to the wind and to keep it from pooling water, especially at 80 feet. So you don't want it to be falling inside the pool necessarily.
Right.
It'd be hard to get that one out.
We deal with over 100 click winds all the time here, so it's normally every other week we're getting a big blow through here, so it's got to handle a lot of wear and tear from the wind whip. So
it's got to be tied down pretty tight.
Yeah.
It sounds like the evolution of that project from you having done it one way, Craig, to this way here. Like it's symbolistic of the passing of the torch there, that he kind of improved it, made it more technical, and redid the project. It sounds like Lethbridge Canvas is in good hands for a lot of years to come.
I think so.
Yeah, I still can't get over that you're like writing programming and stuff, and on top of running the business, having an ability to deal with, fixing the sewing machines, putting together projects, and that's amazing. And also having the business acumen to run a business. That's great. The only thing is, don't stretch yourself too thin. Make sure you're passing along some of that knowledge to some other people, and or at least just supervising it.
Yeah,
that's true. Honestly, most of my programming is done during the winter because then it slows down, so I actually have time at my desk.
Yeah, he likes the winter. That's the only time he gets to play with this stuff when it's slower.
You got to go back down to Puerto Rico, Craig.
Yeah,
there you go. I wish.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I know one of the things that we didn't mention, Craig, you mentioned you were, you always found IFAI was a great networking source in that for you, and you were a past chairman of the IFAI Canada board. And I'm curious, Jonathan, have you been to some shows and that? Have you had a chance to network within the industry?
Yeah, I've been to one IFAI show. It was when it was in
Orlando. I took him down to Orlando 2 years ago. So just before the pandemic hit.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So that was really good. I do like the shows just because I get a chance to catch up with all the people I haven't seen for so many years and see what's new. So I like to go at least every couple of years, and if we can make it work, it's always better when they're in warmer places.
Yeah, I think they generally aim for that.
Yeah.
Vegas,
And I remember when we were doing the Canadian shows, which we haven't done one for a little while, Lethbridge was always very present in the awards categories and that. Curious, actually, Craig, have you ever submitted to the international show as well, like for some of the projects?
I haven't recently, but in years past, yes, right. We have.
Well, we're gonna be looking for more of those going forward.
Maybe we'll put those methane covers in there.
Yeah,
absolutely. Listen, I've always been impressed with like the ingenuity of the projects you guys have done, and it sounds like that's just going to continue and maybe even improve going forward. So it's really, really nice to kind of hear about the not just the transition and but it sounds like an evolution of your business going forward, and that Lethbridge is going to be with us and an industry icon for years to come.
Yeah, that's our hope.
We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today for the podcast.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Talking Textiles series. This podcast is brought to you by Advanced Textiles Association, a not-for-profit association representing the international specialty fabrics marketplace. Learn more about events, workshops, and webinars ATA hosts throughout the year at textiles.org/events.